The insecurity of software systems in critical public services, the vulnerability of critical public services to software outages, to ransomware, to hacking, to theft has been significant and deeply concerning, exemplified by the recent ransomware attack on the NHS, the long-standing issues with the Post Office Horizon system, and so on. In August 2022, a ransomware attack targeted Advanced Computer Software Group, a key IT service provider for the NHS, and the attackers exploited a customer account that lacked multi-factor authentication, that's MFA, and enabled them to access sensitive data, including medical records and personal information of 82,000 people. The attack significantly disrupted NHS services, including the NHS 111 emergency helpline, affecting patient care and operational efficiency. The Information Commissioner's Office, the ICO, provisionally fined Advanced Computer Software Group £6.9 million for failing to implement adequate security measures. John Edwards, the Information Commissioner, emphasised the distress caused by the loss of sensitive personal information and the additional strain placed on an already pressurised healthcare sector. He highlighted the critical importance of robust cybersecurity practices, such as a regular vulnerability check and the implementation of MFA, that medical records and authentication. And all we have to do is look across at the Horizon system used by the Post Office since the 1990s to see how useless these systems can be. The Horizon has been plagued by issues that have caused severe injustices. Horizon was intended to streamline the management of accounts and transactions in post offices, but its software flaws led to discrepancies and resulted in wrongful accusations of theft and fraud against sub-postmasters and sub-postmistresses. Over 700 were prosecuted, many of whom were imprisoned or financially ruined before the faults in Horizon were acknowledged, and they still haven't received proper compensation, proper recompense. Their lives have not been put back together again, quite apart from whether they have received proper apologies and, as I say, proper compensation. Some of these people dug into their own pockets to pay out to the bullying of the post office. And the response of the last government and this government is to talk about a packaged compensation. The compensation needs to follow the return of the money that was stolen, the return of the money that was taken from these sub-postmasters. And it's not just the faulty systems, it's the faulty understanding that lies behind those systems and the failure of the government and the authorities to take proper responsibility for the systems that they use. The systems are just a tool. A bad workman blames his tool. And there's lots of bad workmen in both the NHS and the Post Office and the government overseeing these, the government ministries overseeing these institutions. Unlike the NHS attack, the Horizon systems stemmed from inherent software defects and inadequate response from the Post Office to address these flaws. This contrasts with the NHS breach, which was more about a failure to protect against external cyber threats than internal system faults. But both incidents underline the vulnerability of critical public service systems to cybersecurity threats and operational failure. The NHS breach highlights the necessity of strong defensive measures against cyber attacks, and the lack of MFA on a critical account was a glaring oversight, stupidity, illustrating a fundamental lapse in security protocol. The Horizon scandal, on the other hand, underscores the dangers of relying on flawed software systems without adequate oversight, and the catastrophic human impact of such failure. John Edwards' comments on the NHS breach resonate strongly with the need for systemic security improvements across all sectors handling sensitive data. He's noted the distress caused by the breach and the disruption to services, calling for urgent implementation of basic security measures like the MFA and regular system updates to prevent similar incidents. And so while the specifics of the NHS crisis and the Horizon crisis differ, the underlying lesson is clear. Robust, proactive cybersecurity, regular checks, diligent system management are paramount in safeguarding public trust and service integrity. And without that, this is a disaster. As John Edwards, Information Commissioner, has said, losing control of sensitive personal information will have been distressing for people who had no choice but to put their trust in healthcare and in health and care organisations. Not only was personal information compromised, but we've also seen reports that this incident caused disruption to some health services, disrupting the ability to deliver patient care. A sector already under pressure was put under further strain due to this incident. So if you look at what he said, personal information will have been distressing for people who had no choice but to put their trust in the health and care organisations. People have no choice but to rely on the system as it is presented to the public, whether this is managed by Horizon or whether this is managed by some other organisation. It doesn't make any difference. Horizon or Advanced Computer Software Group. It's not about whether they are fined or shut down or whatever. It's about the fact that they have undertaken to deliver a service and that service has failed. And we have no choice but to accept the service which they have been paid to protect, which they have been paid to deliver. This is a failure at the point of delivery. And so it's not just about transferring the blame to the software manufacturer. It's also about the government and the government department shouldering responsibility for that blame, because we have no choice. And that's the bit that's missing, isn't it? That's the bit that's missing. A bad workman blames his tools.